right, so let's get started. Billing worksheets. Fun topic, big topic, and I've got the help guide open. So for those of you who aren't used to our new help guide yet, just remember again, we do have a new help guide, support at workamajig.com. And if you just type in billing worksheets, we do have an overview section, and then all of the different setup areas also have some billing guides and a little video for you to review. Okay, so we're going to basically be talking about all of the additional items that we have in here in the overview. And so if you guys do have any questions, don't hesitate to kind of let me know. If it's really more pertaining to your particular process, then it might be better if you set up a call with your account manager. So let me see, got a chat, going to kind of try and keep. Can you not hear the audio? Can everybody hear the audio? There's a spot in there to be able to, let's see. Okay, so I do see that. Okay, so most people are being able to hear the audio. Let's see, it could be a little louder. That might also be a setting that you could do, Erin, on yours to kind of pump up the audio on your either your headphones or in the room that you're in. So there should be also a phone number to be able to call in. Awesome. Thank you guys for responding. I hope the first person who had asked if they were having audio, whether they were able to, okay, perfect. I can see that you can hear the audio now. All right, appreciate all the feedback, you guys. Lets me know you guys are all out there. I'm not here just talking to myself. All right, billing worksheets. Let's kind of talk about, you know, that whole process with billing worksheets. For those of you that are already using billing worksheets, hopefully maybe there's something that you guys will be able to glean out of this and still learn something new, and that you guys aren't just bored to tears. For those of you who are not yet using billing worksheets, you know, I think this is going to be a great introduction to kind of get you immersed in those. And for those who are coming over from our old classic version into Platinum, you know, this is possibly the first chance that you're getting to see billing worksheets in the Platinum version. So hopefully I'm able to kind of respond to everybody here and kind of, you know, fill everybody in on, you know, the way that they're coming at these billing worksheets. So first off, the purpose of billing worksheets. It's really twofold as far as I see it, and generally people that ask me, you know, about billing worksheets versus what I call this mass billing section here is, mass billing, I think, is great. I think it's a simple, easy process. If I've got some projects in here that need to be billed, I can select them. I can, you know, edit the details, look at them, come in and, you know, select them all and generate. And I have that option to create one invoice per project, which would mean that, you know, I've got 3 different projects. They're going to each have their own invoice. I also have the option to say 1 invoice per client, and for these 2, it would put them on the same invoice. The only thing that mass billing does not allow me to do is, you know, combine multiple billing methods. So it's great if I'm doing all time and materials, or if I'm doing all fixed fee, those can be generated and put on 1 invoice. But I cannot take, let's say, for example, a time and material project, one of my fixed fee projects, and somehow try to combine them onto 1 invoice. That's when you would need billing worksheets. Billing worksheets doesn't care what the billing methods are. It just says if you've decided that you want 1 invoice per client, then we can put those on the same invoice regardless of your billing method. Okay? The other side of billing worksheets that I think is very nice is if you need to go through some sort of a process and you really want your account managers to be able to review what's going to be on the invoice without having to actually create an invoice, have them review the invoice, edit the invoice, change it. You know, a worksheet is a great way for the account managers to review what is to be billed, make those determinations on the worksheet, have that information retained in the worksheet, so it can always be, you can always go back to look at it, look at worksheet comments, look at what was done during that worksheet process, and then to generate those invoices off of those worksheets. So that's kind of just the purpose of billing worksheets versus, mass billing. And, some have their preference of how they need to have that done, and others just by the fact that they must have all of their projects on one invoice requires them to basically go over to billing worksheets. So let's talk about that setup area first of billing worksheets. If I come over to the clients, okay, and I've got two clients that I'm essentially working with in this process here. So if we look at my first client and we come over here to these billing defaults, the client record really presets what's going to be in that worksheet and how that invoice is going to be generated. Because you're doing things en masse, you don't want to have to go and edit each client invoice or each worksheet manually. You want to be able to say, hey, I know how this client is to be billed. I know the invoice layout or the template that we're going to use, and I know the format of what I'd like my invoice to be. So you can set that on your client record in the billing tab, okay? And when you come over to those defaults right over here, this is really essentially what we're looking at within the system. One, invoice templates or layouts. A lot of confusion happens with those. It's either one or the other. So the invoice templates, those are your standard layouts. I've got those simple check boxes in my system set up to say, display this, don't display that. Here's my logo. I can make some things bold. I can uncheck some items, but it's a very simple format. And for a lot of people, that works out great. They're easy to use. You can define as many different layouts as you want, or templates, I should say, and you can set that already in your client record. The layouts is that designer tool. And yes, those are still currently, if you need to edit them, those are in our classic version, and I'm hoping and anticipating that they're going to be available come the first of the year in Platinum. I know that gets delayed a little bit, but the layouts is where I can design things. I can move my logo into different places. I can drag and drop fields. I can edit the fonts and the styles and everything within my invoice. So a little bit harder to use, but the payoff, if you can work those layouts, they really look very nice. So the system is going to say, okay, I'm either using the templates or the layouts as my, how I'm going to print out this invoice. You want one or the other. If you happen to have both in here, the system always says layouts trumps the templates. Okay, so if you've got both, it's going to be reading layouts first and say, this is how you want your layout to be. Of course, we have the billing method. That's what's going to be defaulting into your projects and helping to define how this is going to be billed. But what we really get to is the heart of the worksheets. One invoice per. How is this client going to be billed? This client here is going to say, I've got one invoice per project. So if I've got 5 projects that are to be billed, I'm going to get 5 separate invoices. 1 invoice per project. When I do bill those individual projects, then this is how the line format is going to be. The 1 line per is for my time and material jobs. I'm going to be setting those up as basically that billing item and item. If I've got any fixed fee projects, I really want those kind of set up as a service and item, my labor versus my expenses, and I can kind of see that detail of that budget that's being billed. So this is really the heart of what needs to be set on those invoices as well as your templates. Now, if we look at our second client, Quantum over here, I made one little switch on this one, and under the default, I have 1 invoice per client. That means, again, if I have 5 different projects, doesn't matter the billing methods of those projects, they're all actually going to go onto 1 invoice. Okay, let me see, I've got a chat. How can you handle 1 invoice per parent? But you want the details per child company. So you do have the parent client. So if you want the invoice to be for the parent client, you do have those options. Okay, and then basically, but you want the details per child company. So I'm assuming if you're doing 1 parent child, then you've got 1 line per project. and each child company has their own projects. So that would again kind of come down to how do you want to set up the line format. Does that make sense? And if you, again, when we're getting into some of the very specifics of this, that might be something that, test this out with a couple of your parent-child and, child companies and set this up as one invoice per parent client. And then the projects would be set up, project and either billing item and item, etc., or just by project if you don't want to show the details. Okay. All right. Let's see. Okay. So this one I've set up as one invoice per client. And what that's going to basically do is when it goes through that process of generating those worksheets, it's actually going to create a master worksheet in addition to each of the individual project worksheets. So I'm going to show you how that process works. But one of the options that we have now, it's a new option, is whether to include your retainers on your client worksheet. So generally it used to always be thought that retainers were separate. Bill your retainers, get those done, don't include them on your master worksheet, because most people say, hey, the retainer is an agreed upon amount, let's not muddle it up with all the other project stuff that they can argue about and hold up the retainer, and those can be billed separately. So we've added an option to say, some clients say, it doesn't matter whether it's a retainer, fixed fee, or time and materials, everything's just getting dogpiled onto one invoice. Okay, so that's now an option that you have within the Platinum version. All right, so let's go back on over to our billing page. Kind of talking about those retainers again, and even our media. Retainers, the original theory was always, if you've got a bunch of retainers that you need to bill, you might consider using mass billing to bill all of your retainers. Just get those retainers out of the way. It's a contractual amount. Clients already agreed to it. There's nothing that they're going to argue about. Go ahead and get those billed. And even if you select, and if you have multiples, you can even do one invoice per client. So if you've got multiple retainers for a client, you can, put those all onto one invoice. But, kind of go ahead and create those retainers. Now, if you've got some retainers where you've got extras that are being billed, then it might want to go through that process like all of the rest of your projects where, you need the account manager to review those extras, make sure that they should be billed to the client, and let there be a worksheet generated like with everything else. Then you can go ahead and have the retainers be part of your billing worksheets. Otherwise, if you've got just some nice clean retainers, they're hosting fees, there's no projects associated, let me go ahead and select them all, generate my invoices, off they go, and that when I get to billing worksheets, I'm really dealing with everything else, everything that truly needs a review. And excuse me if my voice is going out just a little bit. In addition, media. Media can be part of your billing worksheets. This is when I'm billing those media orders. I've got some insertion or broadcast orders. Lots of times the date ranges that you use on billing worksheets and the transactions it's looking at and the billing schedules it's looking at is very different than the date range you would use for media orders, because media orders you're tending to bill in advance. Hey, I'm already getting ready to build January's orders. Let me go ahead and get those started. Whereas everything else, I'm kind of billing more in the past. All my time and materials and fixed fee billing schedules I'm doing in the past. So you might, again, consider billing your media up front during mass media. Go ahead and select those, generate those, and get those invoices out of the way. So once again, your billing worksheets are just based on time and materials and fixed fee. Okay. All right, let's talk about this generate and the process that's going to happen. So when we come in to generate worksheets, it really is just a matter that we're first going to be searching based on our criteria that we've set up here, and the system's going to show you everything that's available to bill based on your search criteria. That doesn't quite yet generate the worksheets until you actually select which projects or retainers or campaigns that you want to bill, and then it generates those worksheets. When it does generate those worksheets are going to go out automatically to the account manager, so there's nothing that you have to do. So once you search and generate, off they go, which is kind of the nice part about it is, you're picking and choosing which projects to bill, and then they're going automatically to the account managers. So let's talk about some of these filters that we have in here. Our date options. We're looking at a through date. Time and materials, it's easy. I'm looking at all transactions that are up through this date. So, I may be going into the past, and I may be saying, hey, I'm looking at all transactions up through the 15th of the month. I can look at invoice date or posting date. So when we start talking vendor invoices and credit card charges, for a lot of people, invoice date and posting date is always the same date. For some of my clients, they are very different dates. So when you're picking up those transactions, are you wanting to look at invoice date or posting date on those vendor invoices? The review date. The review date is based on, kind of a default in your system settings. So what do you generally give? If you're generally always giving 2 days, maybe you run your billing worksheets on a Monday. You want them all reviewed and back by a Wednesday so that you can get your invoices out by Friday. So you can set under your system settings here what the default is. So mine is just set to 1. Expect my employees to stop what they're doing, review my billing worksheets, and get them back in to me. Excuse me. Project options, am I filtering for any specific clients or account managers, campaigns, etc.? I can bring up some search options. I do have the show more, so if I'm looking by specific statuses, I can do that. The include overhead clients. Now this is checked by default. Why would I want to include an overhead client when we're not actually billing ourselves? Our overhead projects are generally our own admin type of projects. They're not going to actually be billed, but there are transactions that are hitting these projects. We've got our PTO project, we've got our admin project, tracking all of our company meetings and our, internal work that we're doing. We still want to process those transactions on those in order to keep our projects a little bit more clean. We don't want to find that at the end of the year we have so many unbilled transactions that need to be moved to a status called marked as billed so that they're in a process state. Yes, these were good. That's great. Let's go mark them as billed. This allows me to do this more on an ongoing basis and kind of keep my projects a little bit more clean, my admin projects. Now, maybe you might do this more twice a year. Maybe you might do this every time you do billing. Hey, let's kind of keep those admin projects up. But I've seen a lot of my clients where they don't, if they're not using billing worksheets, of course, but if they are using billing worksheets, and sometimes you look at some of these admin projects, and they've just got, a year's worth of unbilled transactions in there that they need to go in, and eventually, in order to close the project, they need to mark those transactions as billed. My philosophy, too, about admin projects is generally to kind of open new projects come the first of the year. I've seen some projects that have been open for years on end, and after a while, it just, the project just churns as you start looking and trying to, report on different transactions and things. So creating new admin projects at the start of each new year gives you a chance to review the tasks that you've got included, do these still work, and starting basically fresh. But that's kind of the purpose of being able to include overhead clients, is just to kind of work those transactions and mark them as process. And lots of times on those overhead clients, the billing manager themselves is set as the account manager, so those transactions or those worksheets generally don't go out to an account manager. They stay with the billing manager to process. So the question is the worksheet like a billing preview? And yes, it is. What the worksheet is going to allow you to do is to be able to see all the transactions that are ready to bill, or all the fixed fee projects with the amount to be billed. How much of my budget am I ready to bill, and are there any extras? And what the worksheet allows the account manager to do is to kind of review all of the items, determine whether they're to be billed, whether they're to be written off or transferred or they're on the wrong project. And that information always stays with the worksheet. And then from those worksheets and those decisions that were made, then those client invoices are generated off of what's remaining to bill on those worksheets. Okay, so it's a nice way to always be able to see, hey, 3 weeks ago or last month, we didn't bill this transaction, and you can see the comments in the worksheet on why we were holding off those, or why we didn't bill, or why we wrote off those transactions. Those will always be retained on these worksheets. All right. Let's talk about the production transactions, or basically what's going to be included when we go to generate those worksheets. So the easy one, of course, time and expenses. Now, expenses in here on this tab is really vendor invoices, miscellaneous costs, credit card charges. Okay? It does not include expense reports that have not yet been converted to a vendor invoice. So for my clients that create expense reports, you got employees that need to be reimbursed, and then the expense report gets approved and the vendor invoice gets created, whether it gets automatically created or not. Once you have a vendor invoice for that expense report, that's part of these expenses. Some of my clients have expense reports that they never convert it to a vendor invoice because they pay the employee either through payroll or some other means, so they don't need to convert it, and they go back and set the expense report as paid. Then you would want to make sure that you check this box, because otherwise if you're waiting for them to be converted to a vendor invoice, they're never going to show up. Okay? Let me see, I had a question up here. If I can get my chat box open. There it goes. As they look at the worksheet, can I do that somehow before the worksheet gets sent off to the account manager? So the question basically was, is there a way that I can make comments as a billing manager before I generate these worksheets so that when they get sent to the account manager, they have the ability to see my comments? So the question would be really no, however. So once you do the search and the generate, phew, off they go. It's immediate. The account manager can refresh their screen. They're suddenly going to see all these billing worksheets to review. However, when the worksheets are generated, if there is something specific, the billing manager will be able to see all those worksheets. They could go and put in a worksheet comment while it's here, before the account manager even sees it, and kind of update those. And so when the account manager goes in to review those worksheets, they would see those worksheet comments. All right. Any questions about expense reports? Because I know that can be a little bit confusing as to whether you convert or don't convert to a vendor invoice. If you've converted them to a vendor invoice, they will be up here automatically. If you don't, and you never do, then you want to make sure that you choose this box, because those items should still be billable to the client. Purchase orders. Purchase orders, and if we scroll down a little bit, are media. So you have the option to say, if I'm not pre-billing my media, through mass billing, or if I'm pre-billing any purchase orders, I can check this box, and the system will bring in all of the orders. Now again, account manager can decide whether they're going to actually pre-bill that order or not, but it does bring those orders up into the worksheet. I'm going to jump down to this bottom one down here that says open orders only. You kind of think, well, of course that sounds logical. But if I manually close an order, I've got a purchase order for $10,000. We've decided not to, we're not going to be doing this printing, or we don't need this order, and I manually close the order. Now it's a closed order, but it hasn't been billed. Well, it's closed. I closed it. This is basically saying, hey, don't include that one, even though it's closed. Only show me the ones that are still actually open. They don't have a vendor invoice, and I have not manually closed it, so then you can bring that order in. Seems a little redundant, I know, but we needed that extra box to say, and that's why it's also automatically already checked. So if you check this one's already checked. The three in between. Again, Seems like a question kind of sort of like the overhead clients. Time and materials, 0 amounts, fixed fees, 0 amounts. Why would I want to include those on my billing worksheets? Again, they're on by default. You can uncheck them. But what it does is it gives the account manager the opportunity to review this project and say, yeah, we're in production and it's a time and material and there's nothing to bill. I could have sworn we did something on this project. It might be that there's time entries that are not yet approved, or some expenses that haven't been, even submitted for approval yet. So it's an opportunity to have your account managers review those projects that have nothing to bill on them and verify, yep, there really isn't anything to bill, or wait, I could have sworn we did something. Why is there nothing to bill? Let's go ahead and make sure that all transactions are approved. All right. We bill research in 1/3 increments. Is there an easy way in the system to determine the 1/3 amount of budget and to add to the invoice? Yes, so if you're, to me that sounds like a fixed fee amount. I've got, let's say, a $9,000 budget, and I'm going to be billing 1/3 3 different times, each month for the next 3 months. You can put a billing schedule in your project. So if you, are looking at any of your projects, and let's see if I've got a fixed fee, that's a retainers, fixed fee. All right, so this is a fixed fee project. If I go into the billing methods, it's got a fixed amount, and what it's doing is it's going to use my estimate, my approved estimate as my budget. And then I can go in and actually create a billing schedule that my billing worksheets will follow the schedule. Even mass billing will follow the schedule and say, okay, what do you want to bill when, at what time frames? So when you create these, you can either do it based off of a percentage of the budget or off of a specific dollar amount. I can do it off of a specific task. Hey, we finished this milestone, now I can bill. Or I can do it off of a specific date. So if you set up billing schedules off of your budget, then that will be reviewed in billing worksheets when you're looking at that through date. It will look at that billing schedule. Okay. Hopefully that answered your question. Now, if you don't have a billing schedule in a project, then the system will just go ahead and automatically bring those projects in and say, well, hey, your budget is $9,000. How much of that do you want to bill, 100% or just a portion of that? If you use a billing schedule, then the system will automatically bring that schedule in and say, oh, look, you told me you were ready to bill 30%. Okay, I'm bringing in 30%. Doesn't mean that you can't change it on that worksheet. Okay, next question is, where do you go to add a last-minute expense or transaction to our already generated billing worksheet? I'll definitely show you that, because you'll be able to add and remove transactions from a worksheet, so that if you have to edit one, you can remove it from a worksheet, edit the transaction, then turn around and re-add it back into the worksheet. So I'll definitely show you that when I show the worksheets. Okay? All right. Now, if I go ahead and hit search, what the system's going to do is it's going to show me some categories, all of my different projects based on billing methods. So I look at time and materials. I have 3 projects in time and materials. Now, for American Colony, remember we were setting that one invoice per project. So this is going to be 2 separate projects, and it's going to create 2 separate invoices. Quantum right now just has 1 time and materials project, but I know that there's some fixed fee projects in here. And Quantum is the one that we said, hey, I don't care how many different billing methods you have, I just want 1 invoice per client. So I'm going to go ahead and select all my time and material projects. I'm going to look at my fixed fee. We're going to ignore my Arizona Design. Can I come over to American Colony? So I've got 2 fixed fee projects and 1 fixed fee for Quantum. So again, this one's going to be combined with the time and material to be on 1 invoice. So it's going to be creating what we call that master worksheet. So I'm going to go ahead and select these. I have no campaigns. Campaigns is another way to group by, and if you really kind of want to look into campaign billing, I've got some enhancements that are also coming for campaign billing just in general. So I'm going to kind of, if I have a few minutes, I would like to talk about kind of those enhancements that are coming up for that. That's going to be kind of a big one, and they're working on that right now. And then, of course, I have that one retainer for American Colony, and I have this one set up. I believe that I've got my $10,000 retainer amount, and I've got my I've got some extras that are being billed in addition to the retainer. And so this might be a reason why I didn't use mass billing, because I need the account manager to be able to review that unbilled amount and make sure that that is an expense that should be billed for this retainer. So now I've kind of selected all of my projects, and I'm going to go ahead and generate. So now they're gone. Come back to my screen, and let me kind of let my screen reload, make sure I've got those all set up. So what the billing manager sees is all the worksheets that are currently in review, and there's already one that's ready to create the invoice. In addition, when I go and look at my account manager's login, he's already going to have some billing worksheets that he needs to review, and they're going to be up in his bell notification. So let's go ahead and kind of look over and see my account manager down here. So I've logged in as my account manager, and if you're going to test this for yourself and you're going to kind of do this process, make sure that when you log in as another person, do it on a different browser. I've logged in as the billing manager under Chrome. I've gone ahead and logged in as my account manager under Firefox, and so it kind of keeps those security rights clean. System doesn't get confused as to who you're logged in as. But if I go ahead and kind of let this screen reload, and so that I can show my notifications up here, and I've got my bell notifications, I have my billing worksheets to review. So those worksheets, one per project or retainer, went out to the account manager, and he's got all these different worksheets to review. Now, there's also a master worksheet that's going to need to be reviewed, and we're going to talk about that one. So if we kind of go ahead and look at this one, let's see, wrong one, chat. Can a billing worksheet be sent to more than one account manager in sequence for reviews? No. It is a single process where it goes to the account manager automatically. From the account manager, it comes back in either to the billing person or to the billing manager. You can have separate billing managers per client, and it will go through that review and approval, and then you generate the invoices, and then the invoices can be reviewed and then finalized, approved, and posted. Okay. And let's see. Yes. So what will happen is when the account manager, so the question was, can the manager reassess what was said or what was decided on the worksheet? So that is correct. The worksheets right now was just what the account manager thinks should be billed, not billed, transfer, written off, etc. That's on the worksheet. The worksheet, once they're completed with it, is going to come in for approval to the billing manager. Billing manager is going to be able to look at this and say, how come you're writing off $10,000 worth of labor? Let's have a discussion. So it kind of goes through that final review process to say, and the billing manager might be sending it back to the account manager to say, why? What are we doing? How come you're, not? And they reject it and send it back to the billing manager. Does the worksheet start to get its info from the schedule screen? Not sure if I completely understand the question. If your time and materials, it's looking at the through date and grabbing all the transactions, all labor and expenses up through that through date. If you're a fixed fee, it's either looking at the billing schedule or looking to see if there's remaining budget to be billed, and it will create that worksheet. Those are the kind of the two things that it's kind of looking at, or the retainer, of course. Is the retainer ready to be billed, and are there any extras that need to be billed with it? So hopefully I answered that question. If there's a service you want to bill for on a project that isn't on the billing worksheet, can you add it? For example, if you need to add design time that wasn't originally put on the project. No. You can add it to the invoice afterwards, or you can, but you can't add suddenly additional labor, from the original transactions. What it's bringing in on a time and materials is the actual labor. You can't then add time to that. You would actually have to do that either on the invoice or, add the transaction, the labor time entry if you needed to. You do have the ability to adjust the amounts that are to be billed, but you cannot increase the number of hours per se. Okay. We don't have a billing manager separate from an account manager for approvals. Where is the setting to make the billing manager and account manager the same person? So that has to do with having the right to create client invoices. If your account managers have the right to create client invoices, then whatever they approve is just like the or the billing manager approving it, and it's going to skip that second approval process. It's just going to say, if Sam here, the account manager, had the right to create client invoices, when Sam goes in and approves the invoice or the worksheet, it would already be ready to create a client invoice from. Okay. All right. So if we go ahead and look at this first worksheet, okay, it's a time and material project. Okay. What I can see here is that I have a specific budget already on this project. I can click into that. I can look at the budget. I can look at the actuals that have hit the project. What was already previously billed. So we already previously billed $17.30, and what is actually to be billed this time around. Okay. So if I come in and look, prior invoices, that was that $17.30 that we previously billed. I can click into this to come in and click and see those invoices. So again, depending on the right, are they opening just the preview of the invoice, or is it actually opening up the invoice itself? If you have the right to create and edit client invoices, then when I click on this, it will actually open up the invoice, not just the PDF of that invoice. What I have here is the to bill amount. This is what's going to be billed on this worksheet. So I can click into this and see the labor transactions that are making up the $900. So this is where we start to talk about what do we do with these transactions. If everything is good to bill, I don't need to do anything. I just need to approve the worksheet and say, this is good. This is what I want to bill. If I select a transaction, I have some what we call form actions. Do not bill. Do not bill really says, don't bill this now. I need to save this. Maybe it's an expense and I can't do the expense until next time around. Do not bill just basically says, I see it on my worksheet. I see it's ready to be billed, but don't include it in this invoice. When I generate worksheets next time around, this transaction will come right back up again and be available to bill. It's just saying, just don't do it now. Can't bill this one right now. Transfer. This gives me the option to transfer it to a different project and task. And if you're posting work in progress, that transfer date's going to definitely make a difference. So be cognizant of those transfer dates. Okay. Under the More Actions, I have a Bill button. But again, if this is my worksheet and everything on it is ready to bill, and it's good to go, I don't need to select all and click Bill. Okay, all I need to do is just approve the worksheet, and it will take this $900 worth of transactions and bill them. Okay, this bill really comes up more when you've, let's say, marked something as billed or written something off, and you change your mind and say, "Ooh, let me go ahead and actually bill this. I really shouldn't be writing it off." So marked as billed is something that happens more with fixed fee, and it will happen automatically. If I have a fixed fee project, I'm billing the actual budget. I'm not billing the transactions. Now the project is still tracking all the transactions within here, but it's not going to be billing those transactions. So what the system's going to do is it's going to automatically mark those transactions as billed. It moves them out of an unbilled or ready to bill status and moves them to a status that says, hey, these transactions have been processed. That's okay. We're billing it in another matter. Let me see that question that came in, if I can open up my, there we go. Where are the general ledger accounts for the billing? So that the general ledger account's going to come really from how are you generating that invoice? Are you doing it by service and item, which means it's going to look at each labor and expense transaction and go get the details from that item? You know, in your system setup, hey, my account manager time all goes to my 4,300 income account, but my expenses all go to my, 4,600 account for my production expenses. So it's going to be based on how are you generating that invoice, which is coming again from that client invoice. How do we see that while we're billing? You won't. What you can see is, I'll kind of show you how you can see your default account. So if you've got, let's say, just a single line project, I'm not going to show any detail. It's just going to show a project line that says, here you go, here's your bill for $5,000. There's a default account that you'll be able to see in the settings of the invoice or in the worksheet, and I'll show you where that's at. Otherwise, it's basically going to not show you the detail until you get to the actual invoice. You know, that posting detail of what happens, or if you're in accounting and you want to see a pre-posting report, you can see a pre-posting report to see how everything's going to post. But basically everything is coming from those items that you have in your system setup. How do we see that while we're billing? So there is no proof, so we can ensure the accounts are correct. You can, as an accounting person, you can see that in your pre-posting report if you'd like to review that, but that would be after invoice generation, but before the invoices are posted. So there is a section in your accounting page where you can run a pre-posting report and see all of those invoices and see exactly all of the accounts that will hit. But through the billing worksheet process, no, it is posting the detail based on the way you have your system set up. Okay. Under the more actions, marked as billed is generally used when you're not going to bill the actual transaction, and this will happen automatically with fixed fee, so we'll kind of look at that. Write-off. Write-off doesn't hit your general ledger. This is different than bad debt. This is just, taking a transaction and saying, hey, we overworked this. I couldn't have billed this because, we made it a mistake or something like that, a customer service, an internal mistake. So it's just reclassifying the transaction, but that classification of this write-off isn't hitting your general ledger. It's just your transactions are either billed, marked as billed, written off, transferred. It's the status that transaction is in. Okay. Sorry, where do I go? Okay, and we're going to talk about add those transactions, so I will be coming back to that one. Does the item you selected to do not bill, do you place it on hold or does it automatically go on hold? So, difference didn't mean to do a do not bill. Let me go back to the not to bill. If you put something accidentally, like I just did, on the don't bill this, the billing manager is going to be able to see that you're saying don't bill this and it's not going to be included in the invoice. If you change your mind, you can just come back in and say, hey, I really meant to bill this. I didn't mean to write this off, or I didn't mean to, don't bill this now. I can click on bill, okay? And when I come back to my to bill, it's back again. What I meant to do was under more actions. We've got a do not bill and we've got a mark as on hold and mark as on hold billable. This one drives me nuts. I think it was a request by a specific client. I'd love to say just ignore it. So do not bill to me makes the most sense. Hey, I can't bill this expense this time around. We're going to have to wait till our next time. Our bill's kind of high, or I told them I'd bill all the expenses at the end. That's okay. Do not bill basically says, don't include it in your invoice this time around, but next time it's going to automatically show back up again to let you make that decision again. Do you get to bill or do you not get to bill? Are you holding it off for another month? Mark as on hold literally puts that transaction on hold even inside the project under transactions, and it stays on hold until one day you go and take it off of hold. So if I go ahead and mark this as on hold, okay, when I come back and look at this worksheet, it basically says, hey, my to bill amount changed, okay, but I've got an amount that's sitting here on hold. So next time when I generate worksheets, this will show up again, says, hey, you've got some money out here that's sitting on hold. You physically have to take it off of hold in order to be able to bill it. And if I come in my next time around on that worksheet and I see this to on hold, I can go ahead and select them and bring them back in and say go ahead and bill them, and then they will show back up as an available item to bill. Okay, so now I have two transactions that came back in to bill. Back to the original question about how do we add and delete transactions. If you have something that you need to edit, let's say we've got an expense and I have to edit the vendor invoice. I should have changed the due date or something about the vendor invoice. I can remove a transaction from the worksheet. It literally takes it off of the worksheet and makes it available again inside the project. I can go and edit the transaction, then I can turn around and come back up here and re-add the transaction after I've edited it. Okay? If you notice that on this project, so here's my project, if I go and look at that project right now and I go out to the billing tab, you will see that I have no unbilled transactions, even though you know that I do. But it's saying you have a worksheet. So what the system does is in the project itself, you no longer can edit those transactions because they're on a worksheet. So they're basically tied up on this worksheet and uneditable except on the worksheet. If you need to edit them for any reason, you can remove them from the worksheet, bring it back into the project, and then bring it back into the worksheet. But the worksheet basically says, hey, if you've created a worksheet, I need you to work those transactions from the worksheet. Otherwise, you need to remove it from the worksheet. Okay? All right. So if everything is good, there's no changes. All I need to do is go ahead and approve it. Now I've got worksheet comments, so the billing manager could see any comments I might need to make. If I look under the More button, I have my worksheet settings. So I can come in and see where that line format is coming from. So it's basically going all the way down to the item level to bill, which means that when it goes to bill those transactions, kind of coming back to that general ledger, it's going to look at the item to pick up the GL account. Okay, what's my income I'm billing? Well, it's looking at the item to figure that out. Okay, so I can go ahead and approve this worksheet. If everything's good, I've approved the worksheet. It's going to be falling off of this list. Now I'm going to go through the rest of these. If I look at a fixed fee one, so I'm kind of going to go ahead and edit this one. This one's a fixed fee. Okay, I have a budget. If I go in, I can see the billing schedule. If I had a billing schedule, this one doesn't have a billing schedule. I'll show you one that does. I do have a question in here. Let's see. Also, what is the difference of mark on hold? Oh, yeah, I kind of ignored that. Mark on hold is billable versus non-billable. Mark on hold, in fact, let me go ahead and kind of go back to time and materials in here. And they're looking at to bill. And I have the option in here, mark on hold and mark on hold is billable. This mark on hold basically puts the transaction in a hold status permanently until somebody goes into that transaction and takes it back off of hold. Mark on hold is billable says, mark it on hold this time around, but next time around when it comes up, automatically make it billable for me. What's the difference you say between this and this? Nothing. I'm thinking a client must have asked for that specifically to be able to classify something as I specifically put something on hold as opposed to do not bill this for whatever reason. But these two essentially work the same way. It doesn't include it on this invoice, but then the next time around, it's automatically a billable item. Okay? Does that Help? And let's see some of the chats. Let's see. Going back, is it okay to bill only some projects using worksheets and the other by mass billing? Yes, definitely. To me, mass billing is an easy way to bill. It's clean, it's easy. I always say if you can use that and you like that process, bill what you can out of mass billing. Then for those that need to go through that a little bit more laborious process, then use billing worksheets. When does the system recognize revenue only when billed? So the system will, let me see how to kind of explain this. Let me bring this out of the way. So there is an option in here that says, let me go ahead and close this chat for a minute. So there is an option in here, advanced bill option. So if you're creating an invoice, okay, it's going to assume unless, let's see if I've got a billing worksheet in here that has a, whoops, that has a billing schedule. You know, this has a billing schedule in it. So this is a fixed fee project, has a billing schedule. It's looking at the schedule to know when to bill. In this billing schedule, when you create your billing schedule in your system, you can create the invoice as an advance bill. Hey, the first time around we go to create invoices, I need 50% of the budget as an advance bill. The system will then use that and say, okay, this is not a revenue invoice. Otherwise, it's going to assume that these are all revenue invoices. Now, if I have any advances that need to be shown, and of course on this one I don't, let me go back to my, to this project. I think here. This project is basically saying, hey, we've got $117.50 to bill. I've got some unapplied advances on this client. Do you want to go ahead and apply them right now? That would create this as a revenue recognition invoice. Okay, hoping I answered that kind of for you, if that was your question. And let me see, I think I had another chat. Is there a way to make the worksheet comments transferred to the invoice that is client facing? Yes. So this invoice comment here versus worksheet comments. Worksheet comments is more for, hey, I'm the account manager and I want to let the billing person know kind of what I did and why I did, and you know, don't come and ask me why I had to write off 5 hours worth of labor. That's the way to give your comments to your billing person. The invoice comments, those are the comments that can actually show up on the invoice. So you or the billing person can go ahead and put those invoice comments in, and they can be, depending on your layout, if you're showing those invoice comments, that would actually pull those comments in. Does the prior invoices number include advance billings? I don't, let me see, because I don't, I believe it brings in, and I'm sorry if I don't know the answer for this one, I believe it brings in any invoices that are on, that have this project on the line. Okay, so if your invoice, you know, has the project on the line of the invoice, that's what's going to display in here, whether it's a revenue invoice or an advance bill invoice. But I can double check that for you. So I apologize, I don't exactly know that answer. Let's see what else. We use on hold to identify which projects have been through the billing process, even if not billed. We check before billing is complete to make sure all projects have either been billed or put on hold. Then the following month, we manually put the on hold projects back to billing. Is there an easier way? Are you doing that by, maybe I can talk to you about this one afterwards and kind of talk to you about that separately, because I think, you know, I've got a few questions about how you're possibly doing this. If I can kind of come back to this on hold question. Okay. All right. Let's go back and look at that fixed fee one. So let me look at the second fixed fee. So fixed fee, this is showing kind of, you know, I had it set up by service and items. So here's my labor versus my expenses. I've got, here's my budget. Once again, same budget amount, the actuals that have happened on this project, the actuals to bill, what was already previously billed, so I can see that information right there. The fixed amount. If I have a billing schedule in here, it's picking up that fixed amount. Can I change that? Yes. I don't have to bill what was exactly on here. I can click into this and actually change what I'm billing. But all it's doing is saying, hey, I went and looked at your billing schedule. This is what you told me you wanted to bill, so this is what I'm defaulting in. You can still make that decision. Okay. Let me see. Got some questions coming in. Are you going to cover this works in conjunction with work in process? If I'm understanding your question correctly, so the question is, am I going to cover, how work in process is affected by billing worksheets? So, or billing, I guess, in general. Work in progress is really saying that's the last kind of the process that you do in your accounting functionality. I've done my billing, I've done all my accounting, I've done my reconciling, I've balanced all my books, everything is good. Last thing I do in my month-end procedures is posting work in progress. Posting work in progress will basically then, when it goes to post, it will say, let me find everything that you billed, and now remove that from work in progress, my asset accounts, and anything that remained unbilled, let me now post those into work in progress. So work in progress, posting work in progress is always done at the end after you've done all your billing and after all you've done all your reconciling, because the system then says, okay, let me see now what's left over and go from there. Okay. Let me see, got a couple more chats coming in. Busy conversation here today. Does the prior invoices, okay. When you're in the worksheet, you can click on the rows to say edit the service. Why does it sometimes not allow us? That is an option. I'd really have to kind of see security rights as to what you can and cannot do, and that may have something to do if you're posting work in progress, because again, hey, it posted into work in progress as account manager in this service and this billable rate. But yes, you can. So let me kind of go back to a time and material project. Sorry if I'm jumping around you guys, but these questions are really good that you guys are bringing up. So one of the things that I didn't show is I can click on the line and I can edit the gross and I can edit the service, the rate, the hours, and I can even do a partial write-off. If we're talking about any expenses, if I'm looking at miscellaneous costs, the only thing I can do is adjust the gross. I can't adjust the net, whether it's a vendor invoice or a miscellaneous cost, credit card charge, because the net is what's payable possibly either to the employee or to the vendor, but it is not editable. All I can do is edit the gross. Okay. Let me see what other questions. How can the billing manager set up being able to see the worksheet comment? So when those worksheets come back in for review, so as the account manager reviews those worksheets and actually approves them and says, hey, I'm done with this worksheet, and they send it back in, it goes to the billing manager to be able to review those worksheets, and they will be able to see those worksheet comments on that worksheet. Is there a way to look back at billing worksheet history and any comments? Yes, anything that's in the worksheet stays in the worksheet. And that's what, to me, is nice about using a worksheet as opposed to just going and walking over with a sticky note to tell your, billing person, hey, by the way, I need you to bill 25%, or hey, don't bill this expense on this project, and you've got all these little sticky notes of them telling you what to bill and not bill. The worksheet is something that you can always go back to look at any comments and anything that was a do not bill, write off, on hold, that will be stored in that worksheet. There is also a billing worksheet listing screen of all the worksheets that have ever been generated. So regardless of the status that they're in, you will be able to see all those worksheets. let's see, you can decrease or delete the number of hours on the worksheet. How can you make sure that people always write off instead of doing that? Are those changes also tracked? So those changes are tracked. If you do something within the system, whether you're, I don't have very many hours in some of these, but if you go ahead and change the hours on this and save that, first off, the system's going to be tracking what was original to bill and what is now not being billed. So billing manager is going to be reviewing all these changes of what was, to be billed and not to be billed, and I'd be able to see, hey, the original to bill was this, and we're billing this. Why? What happened within those transactions, and I can see it was edited by Sam, and so, would be able to see that there were some edits done. And again, you can go back to your account manager, and hopefully they would write in some worksheet comments. Now again, it's better to do a partial write-off. Hey, let me split the transaction. I can bill an hour of it, can't bill the half hour of it. Let me do a partial write-off. I'll go ahead and write off the half hour and then bill the remaining hours. That would probably be a better way to go than just manually changing the hours on here and putting in a worksheet comment going, could only bill an hour. It's like, wait, you've literally changed the transactions within here. Okay. Let's see. On the worksheet, we would like to see the gross, net, cost, and income. If you were looking kind of more at like, I guess the way I would kind of see that, you're getting to see some of the budget, the actuals versus, what's to bill, the variance, what's happening within there. As far as seeing income, I guess I'm not sure, if you're going to be billing, $1,353, you're really kind of wanting to see more like a P&L, the revenue minus the cost minus, that's probably not the place to do that here in the worksheet. This is really to say, what should I bill and not bill, and let's get our billing out. Looking at the project and looking at the project's profitability is really that place to be able to see net gross, AGI, and that type of thing. All right. You guys are quizzing me. How long is this webinar? At this point, it should have been done 15 minutes ago, so I apologize. Where is the place to do that if not the worksheet? So again, kind of that ability, if I'm looking in a project, there is the project snapshot. Let me close this, project snapshot, project profitability. That's probably not turned on for everybody. That's probably those, billing people or specific project managers or something, but this is really basically the P&L of the project. Revenue minus cost gives me my AGI, all my expenses, that type of thing. That is a system setting as to whether you want to include that or not, and you can set that by security group. So project profitability right here. All right. I know I've gone long. There's been some really great questions in here. Don't know, the last thing, I kind of just probably need to really wrap this up. If the account manager goes in and approves all their worksheets and everything is good to go, okay, those worksheets have come in, account manager has done their job, billing manager comes in, let me refresh the screen, and basically what happens is now those worksheets come back in for review, okay. Billing manager has the ability to kind of see what was the amounts, what was done, what's to be billed. Well, this one is in review, but basically they come back in to be approved. So the billing manager, I think I have my security rights a little mixed up, but the billing manager would get all these worksheets that need to be approved. I think my account manager must have some rights to create client invoices because they automatically came in. So what really happens in your system settings is they come into 3 phases. When they first get generated, they go out to the account manager automatically. Account manager, if they do not have the right to create client invoices, come back to the billing manager for the billing manager to approve. Once the billing manager approves them, then you're ready to create client invoices from them. If you'll notice in the client invoices, there is this master worksheet. This is where it's showing the two different projects, the time and material project and the fixed fee project, that is showing up on this worksheet. If this worksheet were not approved, I could say, hey, you know what, I really don't want this project being on this master client invoice. You know, client really decided we wanted to kind of separate these and do separate invoices. I can remove. When I delete this off of the master, all it's doing is removing the worksheet from the master. It is not deleting the master. Okay? If you need to, you can, you know, go in and delete, unapprove. If there's any issues or anything, you can unapprove. You can delete a worksheet. If you delete a worksheet, it moves all the transactions back to the project, makes them all billable again. So if you're testing and playing around with this, you can go through this process, generate these worksheets, see how they work out, go in, go ahead and delete them. You cannot, however, delete a master worksheet until you remove the child worksheet. So if I try to delete this right now, it's going to say, hey, it's got some child worksheets. What are you trying to do? You can't delete a master. I would have to first delete the child worksheets from the master. Then I could go through and delete the master. Okay? And once, of course, you have all of these that are ready to create invoices, you can mass select. You can go ahead and generate those invoices. It's going to look at those client records on how to set those up. Those will show up down here as to whether they're going through an approval process or whether they're already ready and approved and ready to be printed and emailed out. And let me see, I have another chat. Is there a place to see the overall client profitability by month? So if you're looking at a specific client, yes, that would be more your client P&Ls, project P&Ls. So I'll show you that at the end. Let me see if there's any others. Well, I don't want to hold everybody up too long. And I think that was it. And I still have the one question, the on hold. Let me see if I can answer that one, but I might, you know, do that one and let everybody go. Anybody else have any questions? I know this ran a little bit long, but you guys had some awesome questions in there. Let me see one more. Yes. So there will be a video. The video should probably be available in the next day or two. And if you're on the help guide, okay, and let me close some of these panels over here. If you're on the help guide and you're just on the plain Workamajig page, you go into the Get Started, come down to the video section. If you come down here to webinars, there is a section here to follow. So anytime there's any updates to the webinars, whether they're upcoming webinars or we're updating the videos on the past webinars, there will be an email that you get sent out that there's been an update to this page. And so then, of course, it will let you know as soon as the webinar is available for this one. All right, let me see. Awesome. I appreciate you guys' patience. I know there were a lot of questions. And for the one person with the question on hold, I don't know if you want to hang on or if you just want me to possibly reach out to you, or if you wanted to reach out to support and ask that question on your support to your account manager. I'm sure that they'll also be able to help you. Either way, just let me know what you'd like to do. And thank you guys again. Appreciate all of your patience as we go through this process, and hopefully everybody maybe learned something new that they didn't know. All right? Thank you guys. Thank you, Rick. Appreciate that. If you don't get the help, let me know. Be happy, you know, I know your account manager will be able to assist you with that, because I did have a couple questions about how you were doing that. So thank you again. Appreciate your patience.